Bama doing some work in the transfer portal. Are they winning or are they losing? Or is it break even? We're going to talk about that. What's the latest on Ryan Grubb? Is he a real candidate to come to Tuscaloosa? That and more right here on Cover Crimson. Great to be with you guys today. Brought to you by mybookie.ag. Let's get the show started, and let's roll a little Tide today. He's Clint Lamb. I'm Mick Gillispie, covercrimson.com, talking Alabama. Let's get right into it. Transfer portal. Clint, we picked up a couple of running backs, another offensive lineman, watched some guys leave, and including a couple players, and one in particular that you thought probably not a great guy to lose late. So now that the portal's closed, Bama could still keep adding. We're not going to subtract. But what do you feel like right now the net gain or loss is? Because for me personally, I'm looking at some of these guys we're getting back, and I'm like, okay, you're a running back from the Raging Cajuns, but you're giving up like 4-star players, 5-star running back. Are we losing in this? Because to me, it kind of feels like, man, the net gain isn't very good. And I guess it's just the world of college football. But tell me I'm wrong.
Well, what's the approach of both players? Justice Haynes, he's a guy who former borderline 5-star recruit. Some places had him as a 5-star. He was the starter for the beginning of this season for Alabama. I want to say through at least the first half of the season. Then Jam Miller ended up taking over. But this is, he's a highly regarded guy. Didn't really like what was happening in Tuscaloosa, whether it be workload, whether it be production when he was getting touches. It just wasn't there. So kind of what is his mindset? He probably wants to be, a workhorse or as close to a workhorse as he possibly can somewhere. Or he at least wants to be what he was in Tuscaloosa this year with maybe a little bit more, opportunities, or at least maybe better success, maybe a better offensive line in his mind, or a better system, a run-first system or whatever. So what is he looking for compared to what, Dre'Lyn Washington is looking for, who has been a guy who has been in a committee. He's had some production, but is he looking to go somewhere and be, the star and handle a workhorse type of load? It's a different mindset. And Alabama wasn't looking for a running back 1. I don't even think they were looking for really a running back 2. They were looking for a guy who they feel like could fit the system, could have success if they needed to turn to him and rely on him, can do some different things for you in the passing game and pass protection, all that stuff. And just Dre'Lyn Washington, to me, is the perfect candidate for that type of role. I mean, I know everybody wants to just stack, hey, this is Madden, this is NCAA. Let's just get a bunch of 90, your starting running back's a 99 rating, your second running back's 95, your third's 94. That's just not how, Nick Saban for a while, it did feel that way. It was that way, actually. But that's not the way college football is operating nowadays. And so, you wonder why they go out and they sign this type of player. And it's like he's filling what they're looking for. You've got to sell the right guy, the right role. I mean, if you promise, Rasul Fajan, or however you say it, the Utah State running back who ended up committing to South Carolina, that was a guy that topped 1,000 yards rushing. I think he had actually topped 1,000 yards the last 2 seasons, if I'm not mistaken. A little bit of a different player, 5'11", 200 pounds. Dre'Lyn Washington, he's a lot thicker, a little bit shorter, but that's a guy that had kind of handled a much bigger role. Was he looking to come be Alabama's number 3 running back? Maybe, and I'm sure they wouldn't have sold it to him that way. He will have opportunities to get touches, and I'm sure Dre'Lyn Washington will too. If he comes in and performs well, maybe he ends up being RB2, or maybe in some crazy world he ends up breaking out. It's the right system, it's the right coaching staff, and he ends up being RB1 somehow. But that's not what was promised. That's not the expectation for him coming in. It's a different mindset. So I know everybody wants to just stack all this talent. Hey, let's just get as many, star players as possible, but it's kind of like a basketball team. It's not just about stacking as many star players as you possibly can. the pieces have to be able to work together. And if you got too much going on as far as star power, not enough role players, you could actually end up having some problems. But Washington, I mean, watching him on tape, I think he's a good player, but I think Alabama's doing this at a lot of different positions. We're just using him as the example. Some of the other guys they've brought in, what is the purpose of bringing them in? It's like they're upside players. You don't necessarily have to have a new starting right tackle. That could very well be Will Conformby. So if, you're talking about a guy who is like, hey, I need to be promised a starting job at right tackle if I'm going to come to Alabama. Well, you can't do that because Will Conformby has earned the opportunity to at least compete for that job. So if you guarantee it to somebody else, what are you doing? So that's it's a different approach than maybe some places are taking, but there's honesty there. And I don't think you're not going to have nearly as many guys who are maybe getting to a new place and they're not happy with their role. Nick Saban, I thought when they added Trey Amos and Jalen Key a couple of years ago, I'm sitting there thinking, I just don't see either one of them starting. I think they were brought in for depth, but there was at least enough where if you're Nick Saban, you could pitch, hey, you can compete for a starting role here, and you can be a part of this equation for us. I didn't know how much that would actually end up happening. Trey Amos turned into a good, reliable depth player who ended up needing to be relied on throughout the course of that season with injuries. Jalen Key ended up being a game one starter for Alabama. And so, I ended up being very wrong on that. Maybe Dre'Lyn Washington's in the same situation. Maybe he ends up being the best running back Alabama has. I don't think that's going to happen going in, but, he'll be given the opportunity to earn touches and have a massive role. It's just not a guarantee. I don't think fans should be upset with that. I think Alabama's focus has been on Alabama. And, hey, we've got some talent here. Nick Saban's helped us. We added some key pieces out of the transfer portal. LT Overton, Keon Sabb, we got to take care of our own too. And that's going to cost NIL money as well. So the priority was, hey, we want to take care of our own. We want to be known as a program that develops. We take guys and then we take care of guys. And I think that's the right message. That's the way that you build long-term success, in my opinion. But then you got to go out and you got to find some complementary pieces to some of this, or at least some depth pieces. And I think Alabama's done a pretty good job of that.
Doesn't feel like they've had the impact, though, in the portal that they had last year. I mean, every time you turn around, it's like Keon Sabb. Okay, yeah, this guy's really good. You hear from your people in Michigan, they're like, yeah, we thought he was going to be a star. Parker Brailsford, yeah, pretty good player. Jeremy Bernard, yeah, our best wide receiver. I'm looking at these guys we're getting now, and it just doesn't feel like they're the same impact of player.
First of all, a lot of that
was Overton. I mean, really. I mean, think about it. Some of the best players we had last year were coming out of the portal.
I think I part of that's timing. That was post spring, right? Mm-hmm. That ended up mattering quite a bit. Why? Because I think at that point when guys are entering the portal, if they're searching for a paycheck, they enter the portal the first time around. Mm-hmm. If you're entering it after the spring, you've gone through the spring with your current program. Your projected role might not be where you want it to be, or maybe you are looking for something a little bit different for one reason or another. And that's when you elect to enter. I'm not saying that everybody will be that way. There will be money chasers, in that window as well. But I'm saying, in my opinion, I think it's a little bit different. It's these older guys that are like, hey, I got to go somewhere where I'm going to make an impact. Maybe I'm the starter, but I don't like my role as far as like how I'm used. Things like that. It's a different approach. And a lot of those guys were added, and they had to be added, at least the ones that Kalen DeBoer was a part of. That was post spring. So you can still get some impact players there. But I think right now, once again, this is, guys need to be filling different roles. Nick Saban, a lot of people are willing to do the competition thing to play for Nick Saban and to play for Nick Saban's Alabama.
Saban.
Is Kalen DeBoer getting that same treatment? I mean, I don't know, but I highly doubt it. I don't think hardly anybody's getting that treatment. And that's just kind of the world that Alabama lives in now. But I think that Kalen DeBoer, for keeping this program competitive, the main thing they want to do is the high school recruiting side of it. They want to see, you're going to have a lot of early enrollees get in the spring with those guys. The ones that you said, we'll give you a chance to compete. If they look way in over their head and you thought, hey, we might be able to rely on this guy in year one, we're not going to be able to based off of where they're currently at, and we're not going to bank on going through the summer, going through fall camp, and then coming out the other side with them being ready. Then you turn to the transfer portal when you look for the more like, hey, we got gaps and we got to fill them. Right now, you give those young players an opportunity, which is what you probably promised some of them, an opportunity, not a guarantee. And then you also are bringing in guys to fill certain niche roles that you need. You didn't need an RB1. I know you wanted, if you're an Alabama fan, you wanted another RB1 to where if something happens with Jam Miller or whatever, it would be great to have 3 RB1s, but they needed an RB3 really, one that they could rely on. And that could be AK Deer, but is it going to be AK Deer? We can't guarantee that. They bring in more competition. Maybe it's possible that Dre'Lyn Washington ends up being RB4 in this offense. So we don't know, but that's kind of what you're looking at. It's a different approach. It's an honest approach.
Yeah.
And I think that the players are going to respect that approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've said this before. I really like the tool set that Justice Haynes had, but watching him miss blocks, and Mike Johnson pointing that out on the All-American report every week, where he's just running right into the line. I'm sure he'll get that figured out at Michigan, but Jam Miller won the job. He was just by far better. He could catch. He was hitting the holes. And that's the way college football works. Now, we did get some good news, and that is that Keon Sabb is coming back. Damani Jackson's coming back. You turn around, and a lot of these guys are coming back. Justin Jefferson got the extra year of eligibility. That helps. Deontay Lawson's back for his 18th year, which is great. I thought he was done, but I'm glad he's coming back. When he's healthy, he's a really good player. And it was kind of like one guy after the next. Tim Keenan's coming back. So, I mean, you got some guys
Jaeden
coming
Roberts.
back. Yeah, Jaeden Roberts is the other one. That's the one that just kind of hit. But good news on that front for Alabama is that some of their better veteran players are coming back.
And I mean, to get some of those guys to come back, you got to take care of them. And so that's the other approach to this whole thing. We already kind of hinted at that, but that's kind of laying it out there for everybody. And they're good players. Jaeden Roberts, he struggled with injuries all year. I think in a lot of ways that hurt the offensive line because he was either playing hurt and was not close to 100%, or he was in and out of the lineup, and it's hard from a continuity standpoint for the rest of the group to gel when you've got constantly, Geno Vandermark coming in, for him, and then, Tyler Booker, if he has to miss time, or Parker Brailsford, it's like you're still trying to make sure that he's playing all 3 interior spots, but then there's a focus there. Elijah Pritchett is not playing great. Wilkin Formby is not playing great at the beginning of the year. He gets essentially, benched, I guess. And then you end up having a platoon there at right tackle. It's like getting Jaeden Roberts back and having him healthy, which has been a major problem for him. I'm not saying that he's going to go all of next year without getting hurt, even though Devontae Smith kind of had this problem as well. And he did get banged up this year, but for the most part, he was pretty healthy and pretty available. You're hoping the same thing for Jaeden Roberts, but from a continuity standpoint with your offensive line, you now have 3 starting offensive linemen coming back, and Caden Proctor, Parker Brailsford, and Jaeden Roberts. You have some experienced guys in Cam Dewberry, who was brought in from Texas A&M. Geno Vandermark has played a lot of football. And then you've got like a slew of young talent, first and second year guys, some third year guys as well, mixed in there who are also talented. Rott Montgomery, Olasolinen. But, the young talent there with Michael Carroll and Jackson Lloyd and, those guys, I mean, I think it's a really good balance of returning players, some experienced players, some young talent. You've got to get some development there. I still think from a tackle standpoint, they're light on numbers. I don't really know what they do about that because they have potential options, likely options. Caden Proctor is locked into a starting role. Wilkin Formby is likely going to be your starting right tackle. So how do you, what do you pitch to a guy as far as coming? A guy that you would say it could actually be in that competition. That's why I would have preferred that Elijah Pritchett stay, but he didn't. That's part of it. But, just when you look across the board on the guys who came back, Alabama took care of their own. And I think that they're going to end up being better for it in the long run because guys are going to see that and they're going to appreciate that. But Keon Sabb coming back, that's something that we'd expected. But I think Alabama's got 3 really good safeties in Bray Hubbard, Keon Sabb, and, with the emerging Zay Mincy. I think you're loaded up at corner with Damani Jackson coming back and adding Cam Calhoun. And you got Xavier Brown. Jalen Mbakwe, I think he had a lot of upside as a corner. But at the same time, if you're going to be moving him to the offensive side of the football, a lot of times you look at that and say, man, that's leaving Alabama pretty light there at corner. I still think they got some options because you don't know what's going to happen with Dijon Lee and Chuck McDonald. They could be one of those two guys, maybe both of them. They could be ready to contribute earlier than you think, and now your depth is even more shored up. So I like what they've done here, and I think that guys wanting to come back, the experience on this team next year is going to be a lot better. They're going to be still young and new in some areas, but I also think they got the right stuff to continue to be competitive. Not saying they're going to win a national championship necessarily. There's going to be questions that need to be answered, but I think they're in pretty good shape right now.
All right, there you go. So some guys leaving and some guys coming in. So your overall thought net gain. I mean, is Bama in the plus or the negative on these moves?
There's just nobody that really stands out that bothers me other than Justin Okoronkwo. And I've kind of already brought him up.
Yeah.
But for 2025, Alabama's fine, especially if like it is an ACL with Deontay Lawson. And he's probably not going to be like 100% start the year, but you would expect him to get back at some point fairly early. Like people are getting back from ACLs way quicker than they used to. Mm-hmm. Then you got him, you got Nakai Hill-Green, you got, obviously Justin Jefferson. Caden Jones is a guy that the staff really likes. And then you've got some young talent, and I've already, mentioned on this show several times. I like a lot of their young talent there too. But it's like you're loaded up with at least 3 really good off-ball linebackers. I think where it more so hits you is 2026 because all 3 of those top guys are going to be gone. And then it's like, how has the development been with the rest of the guys? If that has been there and you've got guys ready to step up and take those spots, maybe you at least have one where you only have to tackle the transfer portal and add one more. That would be fun. But, Justin Okoronkwo, that was a guy's like, man, if he would sit for another year and continue to just master the defense, master the nuances of playing the position. This guy would, I thought, he's not the same skill set by any means as Reuben Foster, but it's kind of like when Reuben finally got his opportunity to go from being a special teams guy and just we get snaps here or there to being the guy. It was almost like he was an instant superstar. Right. There was a lot of behind the scenes development that happened that a lot of fans don't realize. Justin Okoronkwo, I wouldn't have been surprised if that was him. That's why that was such a big disappointment. Losing Elijah Pritchett from a number standpoint and a competition standpoint, that is a loss. Devontae Smith, leadership, physicality, that is a loss. But there's answers at a lot of these spots, particularly at Husky. I really like Deshaun Jones. I think he would do well there. Red Morgan, Zay Mincy, if they want to get him on the field rather than being the number 3 safety. Maybe it's Dijon Lee. Like they got some options there at Husky. So I'm not worried about, they've been left with nothing. It's just you had more of a proven commodity, a leader in the locker room, had been around for a while, knew the Bama standard, the Bama way. And so losing a guy I'm not saying these guys aren't losses, and I wouldn't say that it's like they're in a net positive. I just understand what they're doing as far as what they're bringing in versus what they're losing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, we'll find out, I guess, next year. DeBoer hits the road recruiting. He's done a really, really excellent job at this. And he's back on the streets again, showing up to high schools, making friends everywhere he goes. I think this is one of his biggest strengths.
Yeah, he's a relationship builder. People love him. Coaches love him. Players love him. And, I think a lot of Alabama fans look at like the program's heading in the wrong direction. It's not heading any more so in the wrong direction, in my opinion, than it was already heading under Nick Saban. That is what I'll give Kalen DeBoer credit for. Anything that you say is going on right now, maybe there's some nuanced things. Hey, you would have never seen Malachi Moore kick a football under Nick Saban. You would have never seen Nick Saban wearing a T-shirt on the sidelines. That type of stuff, sure. But I'm saying as far as like the talent that's being brought in, the development side of things, there's some hits, there's some misses. Overall, I think Kalen DeBoer is doing a pretty good job, and I think it's only going to continue to get better. How much better, I don't know, but I think it will start moving in the right direction. But it's a different world that we're in, Nick. And I think that when you're talking about recruiting and the in-state side of things, I'm curious to see how that looks. I've told people I wasn't worried about the fact that they didn't do great on the in-state stuff this year. It's more 2026 and beyond where I'll really start to pay attention because he would have had time to establish some relationships with the high school coaches, with the players. Let's see how that ends up going. I wouldn't be overly concerned. One question I did have though, and I'm sure you were about to bring this up, but after a lot of like early buzz with Ryan Grubb, nothing. I
Yeah.
mean, it's been very quiet. Has that been interesting to you?
Well, not really. I mean, I think like you get, the season's over and you go 10-7. You hear that it was more of a personality conflict than anything else. I mean, they obviously didn't run the ball as effectively as was it Coach McDonald would have wanted him to run the ball, but you still ended up 10-7 in the NFL, which is a successful season. We've heard that it takes a certain personality to work with Grubb. I think we all kind of know what that means. We've all been. There's just certain people that are really good at their job, but they need to be in a spot where they feel comfortable. And that's been Coach DeBoer for him. I've heard the rumors that his wife doesn't like Tuscaloosa. I bet his wife likes, $1.5 million. I mean, I'm sure that, for $1.5 million, she
Who
can
doesn't?
suck it up, I mean, or whatever, 2 million or whatever he'd get paid. I'm sure you figure all those issues out. Unless she makes 3 million. Maybe she makes 3 million. I don't know. But I don't buy that. I think that you're going to go somewhere where you want it. He'd be wanted. You're going to go somewhere where you feel comfortable. He'd feel comfortable working for DeBoer. He's already had the job and then went to the NFL. He didn't want to leave Seattle. Well, he's leaving Seattle now. At least that's what I would think. Now, if someone else comes in and gives him a better offer, yeah, I mean, I could see him going somewhere else. But we were hearing about this before he got fired. So it's not like, oh, he got fired and we heard about this. So there's been buzz about him coming back to work with DeBoer for a while. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to happen. I think it is going to happen, but if it doesn't happen, that's the way that this business works. Somebody came in with a better offer or a better situation.
Well, first of all, the thing about his wife, I don't know if it's true or not. What I can tell you is that his wife has been on Twitter. She has responded to someone who has commented on some of my stuff, and she has flat out said that was not true.
Okay, good.
So I'm inclined to believe her. I have no reason not to. Other people might choose not to. But I don't really think a lot of people, there's a couple of what I believe to be misconceptions. And I'll kind of lay it out for people how I think this whole thing has went down. Once again, I always want to clarify this. This is speculation. I'm working with a little bit of behind the scenes information. I'm working with what everybody knows. And then I'm putting some pieces together. Some of it may be true. Some of it maybe not true. Based off of my understanding, I don't think he ever got offered the job when he came to interview with Nick Saban. That was a thing that a lot of people ran with. Let me tell you what I think happened. I think he went to Alabama. He interviewed. Had he been offered, I think it's actually possible he would have taken the job. But he was not offered because Nick Saban was interviewing a lot of people. He wanted to make sure it was the right fit. Jeff Lebby was one. Obviously, Tommy Rees was one. Ryan Grubb was one. So when he came, he interviewed. But now you got to fly back, and now all these rumors are breaking that you're interviewing with Alabama. And there's no guarantee that you're getting offered the job. So that kind of, how do you go back? Especially if Nick Saban calls you up and says, hey, I appreciate it. We decided to go in a different direction. Now everybody at Washington knows you were settling for sticking with them. You wanted to be somewhere else. So with, what I think happened is he came out at that point and said, I didn't get offered the job. I'm just going to say I declined them. And so it's like, then he becomes the hero. You went and interviewed with the big boys. You got offered a job. You turned them down to stick with us. And then you helped carry us to a national championship. It's like he's the savior at that point. So that's how I think that went down. As far as like him staying in the Northwest, is that the case? Was that what he was wanting to do? Because from what I understand, he wanted to be an NFL play caller or an NFL coach.
Wow. Okay.
And so it just so happened that when he's going through this process, Kalen DeBoer is moving to Alabama. He's wanting to be in the NFL, and he gets offered a job, or the connection happens where he doesn't have to go anywhere. He's already established roots. His family's comfortable there, and he gets his opportunity. And a lot of people from a skill position, talent standpoint, Geno Smith was at least a veteran guy, but you had Jackson Smith and Jigba, you had DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, you had a couple of running backs. So he's sitting there thinking, okay, I can get my opportunity. I don't have to go anywhere, and it's a pretty good situation to walk into. And so that's what I think he did. So a lot of people saying, oh, he doesn't want to leave the Northwest. His wife doesn't want to leave the Northwest, and he's already rejected Alabama twice. I think the understanding when Kalen DeBoer did go to Alabama from the jump was pretty much, it is possible that if the right situation, Kalen, we've talked, I've told you that I really want to be in the NFL. That's my ultimate goal. And then it's like, hey, if that opportunity comes up, it is possible that I take it. And then it ended up popping up. But now he's done the NFL thing. Nick Saban wanted to try that at one point, and then he figured out the NFL wasn't for him. Steve Sarkisian tried that at one point, decided it wasn't for him. Lane Kiffin, same thing. So just because that was once his dream and what he wanted to try to do was get to the highest level, that might have changed. I'm not trying to justify how, I'm not trying to say, oh, you need to open, completely welcome this guy with open arms. I'm just telling you how I think it kind of went down and why I wouldn't be concerned. But what I will say is that there is a possibility that there would have to be a lot of staff shakeup in order to make this happen.
Mm-hmm.
And continuity and stability, how important is that to Kalen DeBoer in year 2? Because if you want to have a lot of continuity and stuff, you have familiarity with Ryan Grubb, but from a player standpoint, making this adjustment, the players that are currently there and stuff really don't have a whole lot of experience with Ryan Grubb. So that could factor into this as well. I don't know if it's going to happen or if it doesn't, but if it does happen, I think Bama fans should fully support it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you go 9-4 one more season, and you're going to wish you had made a move for Ryan Grubb. And when Paul Feinbaum's already saying you're on the hot seat, not saying he's right, but
do you agree with that?
Well, I don't, because I don't financially. First off, we couldn't afford to buy him out. Secondly, it wouldn't make any sense. I mean, the way you wreck programs is do like Auburn and you just fire guys, and just keep on getting yourself further in debt. He is recruiting. He's doing a good job of everything, but the discipline that it takes to win the games you're supposed to win. He's even winning the games you're not supposed to win. But you have to have the discipline. Your team's got to have the discipline. I was thinking about Devontae Smith leaving, and I was disappointed. But then I'm thinking about that personal foul penalty you had in the Iron Bowl, and I'm like, I'm sick of that stuff. We didn't see that a whole lot at the beginning of the Nick Saban era, and then at the end, you start seeing guys making selfish plays and stuff like that. DeBoer's got to find he's got to keep preaching to these guys that they got to make smart plays and plays that aren't selfish and disciplined plays. And I felt like that was his biggest shortcoming. But if they couldn't figure out that Jalen Milroe's feet, and it's obvious when you look at the video.
It is obvious.
It's obvious. Like he was tipping his plays. If they couldn't figure that out, that to me tells me all I need to know. And there's resources there to make this happen. I think it's going to happen. I don't know how, Saban always figured out a way to make this stuff work, so I think you can bring Ryan Grubb in.
The only thing that ever really stood in his way was Hugh Freeze. At one point, there was rumors that he was wanting to bring in Hugh to be his offensive coordinator. And the old SEC commissioner said, no, thank you.
Yeah, that's right.
We will not be doing that. So that's about the only time. And probably Jeremy Pruitt, too. I think at one point he was like fully on board with getting Pruitt back on staff. And I think due to that show calls, that was something that he couldn't make happen. But you're right, for the most part, if you could make it work you didn't have any obstacles like that, he typically made it work. And he would go through any backlash. I mean, when he brought in Lane Kiffin, a lot of people weren't happy about it. I mean, everybody likes to have the revisionist history and say they were fully on board with Lane Kiffin from the jump. They were fully on board with Steve Sarkisian from the jump. And that is true for some people, but a lot of people was not the case. So, Nick Saban would be able to weather whatever criticism or storm that came with some of these decisions. Will Kalen DeBoer be the same way? Time will tell. But, I think he walked into a fairly tougher situation than people realize. It's kind of like if you're the starting quarterback goes down and you're a freshman quarterback in the backup, you go in there and it's like, does it really feel like your team yet? Is it your locker room yet? Or is it their stuff? I think anybody, as much as, Kalen DeBoer, I think was the right guy as far as following in Nick Saban's footsteps from a mindset standpoint, it was not like it was going to be flawless. And I just think a lot of it is like, that's still like his building. It's his locker room. It's his players. He brought in guys to make himself more comfortable. He brought in coaches that he was familiar with to make himself more comfortable. But being in year one, how much of that existed, I don't know one way or another. I'm just saying that it is a possibility that what you saw out of DeBoer, as far as being willing to be the disciplinary step up and do what he needs to do. I'm not saying that he's going to be better about that moving forward, but if he is, don't be surprised, because I think there's a very justifiable reason why he may have not been here in year one.
Yeah, I wish we would have gotten the sober Lane Kiffin. Lane
Well,
talks about a lot now because we didn't have that guy in Tuscaloosa.
we did get the sober Steve Sarkisian though, so that's one for two. That's one for two.
Yeah, and I mean, look, it's a stress. I'll give him this, man. It's a stressful business, man. You know, I mean, you really have to.
A lot of pressure.
You have to deal with that, and but Bama could have won 3 championships if they'd gotten the Lane Kiffin that Ole Miss has right now. Anyway, all right. Let's talk about Cover Crimson, covercrimson.com. I know you're over there busting it up, keeping people updated, talking on the message board, grinding. Tell us about what's going on, covercrimson.com.
Yeah, same old. We are continuing to kind of get through this off-season process and just making sure that the roster stays updated, where transfers are landing, what's the current scholarship count. That's a lot to keep up with. We got a couple of nice graphics that I keep updated as much as I possibly can over there. It's really nice to look at, to know exactly where they stand in a lot of these positions. Going to be doing the snap counts as far as the season review. That's something that I think is going to be interesting. Also, I'm going to be doing some snap counts that I'm going to kind of list for everybody season long, and it will include the transfer portal players. Not only will it include what Alabama has returning, there will be a section for every snap from players that they're losing, and there will be the transfer portal additions, what their snap counts and their production look like, where you can compare all three. Okay, what do they have coming back? What do they have as far as what are they losing? And then what are they going to be adding out of the transfer portal? Can't do that with high school guys. Really not going to do that on the JUCO level with some of these players, but from a college standpoint, knowing what type of role, it'll be career snaps, it'll be season snaps from 2024. We'll have everybody where they feel real comfortable and confident in where the roster is at from that standpoint. So that's going to be coming as well. Keep an eye on that. That I would think by Monday at the absolute latest, we'll have that up. So definitely get over to covercrimson.com and check it out.
All right, guys, brought to you by mybookie.ag. Use that promo code next round. They'll double your initial deposit at the sports book. We appreciate them for being a part of what we do here. And like, subscribe, thumbs up. We appreciate all you guys, man. You've made this channel really take off. It's popping. We've been experiencing basically continued growth, and it's because of you. So thank you so much. Share with your Alabama friends. Bring them in on what we do, and roll tide, everybody. We'll keep you updated on everything going on. Talk to you next.